If you had to choose a musical group to get its own anime, what musical group would you choose and why? Because I feel like this one isn't going to be who you expect. In a 2025 Animigo interview, Lawrence Guinness talks about various shows that just never got off the ground and saw the light of day, one of those being a Spice Girls anime. So how did this nearly come to be? Well, Manga Entertainment, in collaboration with the studio production IG, went and approached the Spice Girls to see if they'd be interested in having an anime made about their band. The working title for this was Spice Girls Girl Power. At the time, this being the 90s, Manga Entertainment was predominantly a licensee and distribution company that operated out of the US, the UK, and Australia. However, they decided that they wanted to kind of branch out a bit and thought, what if we produce our own anime? Since then, the company's actually been absorbed into larger companies, with it being Madman in Australia and Crunchyroll in the UK. Now, there was actually a lot working in favour for this show to end up seeing the light of day. Production IG, who Manga Entertainment were collaborating with, were an absolute powerhouse in their genre. They're responsible for Ghost in the Shell, for example. This was the 90s. It's right at the peak of Spice Girls' fame and craze, and it actually did end up making it far enough down the pipeline that there was concept art made. If you think about it, there was potential for this show to be like a K-pop Demon Hunters, but like way ahead of its time. In fact, Spice Girls weren't even the only musical group they were considering. They also had an idea for the Wu-Tang Clan called the Imperial Warrior. However, this also never ended up seeing the light of day.
Project I was proudest of, an OAV series that I pitched, conceived and pitched to Wu-Tang Clan. Got very far down the line with a production agreement with them that they'd signed off. I say they'd signed off. There were a few members of the band that hadn't, and that's what stalled the whole thing.
This also isn't the only time the Spice Girls have tried to enter the animated space. More recently, there were talks of a CGI Spice Girls movie set to be released in 2020, coming out through Paramount. Now, as we now know, 6 years later, this didn't happen. And there's probably a few reasons why, 2020 namely being one of them. Little is known about the intended plot for the anime, however, we do know more about the scrapped 2020 film. In this, the Spice Girls were going to be a musical group of superheroes, and everyone was going to voice their own character. Simon Fuller, who is the band's manager, was going to produce this film, and they had writers on board with credits such as Legally Blonde. Unfortunately, the Spice Girls have struck out twice in trying to break into a animated space, but as the saying goes, third time's a charm.